before we do that, we both wanted to touch on Mainz, who are playing an unbelievable season. They are now third in the Bundesliga, 44 points, 2 points ahead of their rivals Frankfurt, and 3 points ahead of Freiburg, who they are playing this weekend. It's the Saturday game. It's probably the most important game on that 3:30 time slot, unless you're of course a fan of one of these other clubs. But for in terms of the best game to watch, surprisingly enough, it is actually going to be Mainz against Freiburg. They're playing a Freiburg side and I wrote my newsletter about this week. Noah Atobolo, right, who broke the record, 570 minutes without a goal now conceded. Him and Finn Dahmen, the other German goalkeeper who has been very, very good for Augsburg, are currently racking up the clean sheet minutes. And it is a very amazing story, I think, overall. And I think, as I wrote in my article, the number one reason why Freiburg are where they are in the standings, they don't score a lot of goals. In fact, they have a minus goal differential. They have the lowest amount of goals scored in the top 10 in the Bundesliga. But it doesn't matter because they don't concede many goals. They're now playing this Mainz side, the high-flying Mainz side. This is not going to be an easy game for Mainz for all these reasons, but the way that they have been going, I don't think I would be shocked if Burkhardt, who's been called up to the German national team once again, is going to be the one that finally breaks that run that Noah Atobolo has been having.
Yeah, it feels like it's a really interesting clash because it's between two of probably the most overperforming teams in the Bundesliga, the two dark horses of the season in German football. Two teams who are in great run of form. I also suspect that we'll probably see Mainz break Freiburg's run here just because, Mainz have a pretty decent home form, actually. I think they actually haven't lost a home game since October, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously, while Freiburg are very good at home, their away form, although they obviously got 3 games unbeaten, their away form isn't outstanding by any means. And Mainz are just this really well-run machine. I think, obviously Burkhardt gets all the attention. Amiri obviously gets all the attention as well as this really impressive kind of central midfield kind of playmaker. But I actually think the kind of secret to this Mainz team is that defence. Dominic Coor in the middle of the park the middle defence does so well for Mainz. He obviously can play in the middle of the park. He can play defensive midfield as well. I was just kind of looking at his stats ahead of the season. Before we start recording, he's top for interceptions for Mainz. He's second or third for possession won. He's second for tackles. Joint top for tackles won. Top for shots blocked. He's just been this ever-present part of that Mainz team. You got Kai Sano in front of him, the kind of defensive midfielder in the middle of the park as well. And Miri is obviously very good going forward, but he's obviously a kind of real kind of counter-pressing beast. He's actually won the ball more times for Mainz than anyone else in that squad this season, which is so impressive. But there was one stat I thought was really interesting, which I don't want it to sound like I'm kind of trying to burst their bubble or kind of myth bust this Mainz team, but the really interesting thing is that if you look at their XG conceded this season, they've actually conceded far fewer goals than, you'd argue they should, if you will. Their XG against so far this season is only like the 5th or 6th best in the league. It's 35, whereas they've only conceded 26 goals. And according to one of the stats website used, their expected points would actually have them sitting on 39 points as opposed to 44. And I kind of wanted to have a look at why that's the case. And the really interesting thing is that while Mainz's defence is really good, and actually they've got the second best defensive record in the Bundesliga after Bayern, which is just obviously incredible. Robin Zentner in goals has actually made the 3rd highest amount of saves this season of all the goalkeepers. And only Kevin Muller at Heidenheim and Timon Weiner at Holstein Kiel have made more. And I just think that obviously just is something that's not really talked about a lot, because obviously we talk about Burkhardt, we talk about Amiri. Obviously Burkhardt's going to get all the attention this weekend after getting into the German national team. But I think Zettner's been pulling off miracles between the sticks. According to Opta, he's saved 5 goals they should have went in, which would explain the difference between their XG and the goals they've conceded. And you kind of add that to obviously Coor in front of them, the midfielders in front of them, both fullbacks have been really good as well. It's just a really good, solid defensive block of players who know what they're doing in that Mainz team. And, they're not the most exciting team. They're not some counter-attacking team like of Mainz teams in the past. They're just a very solid defensive side. And in many ways, actually, maybe remind me a little bit of Berlin in the past, who obviously kind of marched up the league table playing quite, pragmatic defensive football. I wouldn't be surprised if they picked up all 3 points in this game and very quickly beginning to dream of European football, because, they're in 4th place, they're 2 points ahead of Frankfurt, and if I had to make a bet on which of those 2 teams will drop more points between now and the end of the season, I would probably say Frankfurt, since they've lost the last 3 games in a row. Fair play to Mainz, and long may it continue.
I mean, as a card-carrying member of the Goalkeepers Union, I'm so glad you mentioned Robin Zentner. When I wrote the Artobolo article this week, the one thing that I realized, I could have also written about Finn Dahmen as well, right? Who I think has been outstanding. But the one thing that I really noticed a couple of years ago, we really had a situation where I think Germany was really struggling on the goalkeeper position, right? And now you have all sorts of goalkeepers playing really well, whether it's Michael Zettner is another one from Werder Bremen who really has been standing out for me. But Robin Zentner has been outstanding, right? He has just been one of those goalkeepers who I think have been really flying under the radar a little bit, and who has, in my opinion, made such an enormous step forward. To now 30 years old, right? Which is actually a really good age. Like 28 to 31, 32 is the best age for goalkeepers. After that, the reflexes start to slow down a little bit. But they hit the sweet spot because they can do so much with based on experience at that age. And that is, I think, one thing that is really underestimated about this Mainz side is how good he has been and how solid he has been for this team. But it's every aspect, isn't it? Bo Henriksen comes in there last year, really kind of looks at this team and says we're way better than we should be, but we are not getting the fundamentals right. I remember talking to him as part of a Transfermarkt Gegenpressing interview. That article is still up on the site about the things that he's changed, and he said look, we're much better than the results on the table suggests. The problem is we are not getting the fundamentals right. We're not running hard enough. We don't work hard enough. And this is the number one thing that I need to change. And then we can talk about all the other tactics about winning the ball, creating situations that are dangerous. He's a guy who said he broke ground really nicely. At the time, he said to me look, there's certain stats that are really important, and I'm a stats guy. But the thing is what stats often overlook is the little details that players look at but don't quite understand. And he tried to focus the shift more on things that are actually important, which is touches in the box, creating situations in the box that are dangerous, being more effective in scoring, be more effective when you play against the ball, all these kind of things that he thinks are foundational for the game. And that's the thing that I like about this Mainz side, is that they're doing the things that you're supposed to do right as a team. Like when we're talking about another club in a moment, right? Leipzig. Oftentimes when teams kind of starting to perform lower than the talent level that they're at is because they don't get the foundations right anymore. And I think that is one of the things that Mainz are doing really well this year. They're doing the things that they're supposed to do right. They're doing those things right.
Yeah, absolutely. They're just very hard to beat. As simple as that, really. One stat that I also meant to mention as well, which I found really impressive, is that they've taken the lead 16 times this season. In all but one of those instances, they've gone on to either win or draw the game. So they've won 13 of those instances and drawn 2 and lost just 1. Another thing that I think is really interesting as well is that of all the games that they've either been winning or drawing at half-time, they've actually only gone on to lose 2 of them. And that's, what have I got in front of me? That's 19 times, I think, out of 25. 19 times. So 19 of the 25 games this season, they've either been winning or drawing at half-time, and they've only gone on to lose those games twice. So they've just got this incredible ability of just completely closing down teams, grinding them out, and just not conceding goals. And yeah, it's a little different from what we're used to in the Bundesliga, and we've seen teams do this from time to time where obviously the league is so the kind of status quo is kind of gegenpressing light, if you will. And I always joke about this, how nobody in the Bundesliga knows how to defend, but Mainz are a good example. Union Berlin were a good example before that, where if you know how to defend in this league, it just gives you such an advantage over so many teams. And Mainz are just a perfect example of that this season. And there's plenty of teams through the years that have done that. And yeah, long may it continue, because I think they absolutely deserve to be where they are. They're not a team really of superstars. Of course, they've got Amiri, they've got Burkhardt, guys like this, but it's not as if this is like some class of young players who are coming through and Mainz are just riding the wave of outstanding talent. It's more or less a team of journeymen. It's a team of, decent Bundesliga players. And they're all just working to very, very good tactics. And they're the third best team in the league because of it.
I mean, you say that, but they also have 24-year-old Jonathan Burkhardt, who has been incredible, right? They have Nelson Weiber, who is 19, who's a really good up-and-coming talent. Amindo Sieb is a player, I think, at 22, was really interesting. Then they have, what's his name? Paul Nebel, 22, right? They found him I think he was as a Mainz product, but he was on loan at Karlsruhe. So there is some interesting, talented players in there. But at the same time, you're right. I mean, like, they're also still relying on a lot of veterans as well, right? It's a good mix, is what I'm trying to say. And they're doing a lot of things right at the moment. I think the one concern I have is, and we see this, unfortunately, with Bundesliga teams in particular, is that once they get to the Champions League, and we've seen this with Mainz actually in the past when they played Europa League, it's not always the best for a club like that, right? Like, the money is nice at 8 games in the Champions League next year. That's going to be a fine balance for them, because they don't have a deep squad. They don't have the foundational wealth that some of all the other Bundesliga teams have, to just go out and like buy a bunch of players and create a squad that's big enough to handle multiple competitions. And so, as good as this run is, Champions League could provide them with the sort of challenge that could be very difficult to navigate next year, I think.
Yeah, on top of the fact that Burkhardt will probably almost certainly leave. He might stay around because he wants to play the Champions League for Mainz, but he'll either leave this summer or next summer for a big fee. So yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it's maybe something on the horizon. It's the poison chalice, if you will, or whatever you want to call it. But in Mainz will have to just deal with that when that time comes. I think hopefully they'll take consideration how that's impacted similar sized clubs in the Bundesliga, and they'll maybe try and bolster that squad if they can. But yeah,
so hard. It's like that. Yeah. It's like that golden cup in Indiana Jones that turns you into a skeleton. But I guess that's a problem that Mainz will have to navigate once if they get there. I mean, right now it looks like they could. Seeing who's behind them and seeing how teams are performing, Dortmund are 7 points behind them now. That's quite a big gap. Leipzig is one of the teams that will probably try to push them out. Frankfurt, we'll see how they do today in the Europa League and what the repercussions are out of that. Those are teams in and around there that I expect will make a push. I can see Stuttgart also trying to push in. So we're match day 25. We'll see where this ends up. But right now, Mainz are fantastic. A great story. Absolutely great story.